Good morning, Internet. How are you today? I hope you're doing well. It's a new year, and I'm glad to be talking to you. I had a lot of revelations in 2020 and in 2021. I think I'm doing a lot better than I have been in the past couple of years. I want to talk about how I have conquered conflict caused by the silent treatment. So I will be a little bit repetitive because a lot of people talk about this, but I will be upfront and say that typically people who give the silent treatment are amazingly narcissistic. And I'm going to add some more salt on that, and is that they are very cowardly because they can't deal with being an adult and dealing with adult communication. So when I was going through my divorce, I kind of knew that my former spouse was narcissistic. I already kind of started that journey about learning about my own codependency, as well as my eagerness to please. I went through a lot of therapy, did a lot of reading, did a lot of shadow work, I think it's called. And then when I got everything together, I was like, okay, I know I am going to go against a person who is narcissistic. I know that my divorce went better than most, but it still wasn't pleasant, and it went a year longer than it should. But during that time, when I tried to be an adult during the whole ordeal, I was shut down with the silent treatment. He completely withdrew to the point where when he talked about therapy, I shot that down because I was very clear. I was like, before we go to any kind of couples counseling, we should each go to separate therapists, kind of work out our trauma, and then we should come together when we've come to a point of healing. And if anyone who's ever been married or in a long-term relationship with a narcissist knows, is that going to a couples counselor with a narcissist is like walking into a firing squad, because they're going to either A, argue with the counselor because the counselor can see what kind of person they are, or B, use the counselor against you to basically batter you down to submission. And I refused to do that. It was going to be a waste of money, and on top of it, a waste of time, because I was going to be very upfront, and I knew that going into couples counseling was going to not be fruitful for either of us. So, because I did that, and I went to therapy, and I started to be very upfront about what I needed from my former spouse. He decided he was not going to talk to me. He decided that video games and YouTube and him playing online was more important than having a conversation with me. The sad thing is, ladies and gentlemen, what made me leave is his silent treatment and then his explosive violence, Either he was silent or he was insulting me. It wasn't a gradient. It was black or white. So either I wouldn't get talked to for weeks at a time, or I would get yelled at and have some kind of verbal conflict. The funny thing about this is that if he decided that he was not going to follow through with the silent treatment, he could have saved our marriage, but he chose not to. Oh well. So let me tell you why I think, honestly, that he went through his months and months and months and months of silent treatment. And even during our divorce, where I had to get a lawyer because he just refused to even talk to me or sign anything. I think, honestly, he went through his silent treatment because he couldn't deal, right? Narcissistic people don't like change. People with this disorder, they don't like change. And as I've said multiple times before, once they have found their parent, once they have found their mommy or daddy who is going to pat their head and give them the attention and adoration they need, they don't want that to change. And especially if a narcissist marries you or you marry a narcissist, that's it. Like, you are supposed to be the golden retriever by the door. You are never supposed to change. You are never supposed to be different. You are supposed to be that steady source always. If they cheat, if they don't cheat, if they abuse you, if they don't abuse you, you're supposed to be consistently there, right? And so I think with my former spouse, when I started to wake up out of this fog of abuse and belittling and Darvo, he couldn't handle it because he's been doing it to everyone around him for so long. His family members, his siblings, everybody. Like, everyone kind of knew he was the dude with the mouth, and they just accepted it. And they accepted his berating attitude towards everyone. And so when I decided I was going to be the first one to not accept it, he couldn't deal with that, right? He couldn't deal with it. He couldn't deal with someone standing up to him. And so when the verbal berating and even the physical abuse kept going and I stood up to that, then he just shut down, right? Even when we sat at our dinner table and I was like, look, here are my issues with you. And I'm here to listen to your issues with me. It never was a give or take. It never was an adult conversation. It was always my fault. I was the source of everything, or it was his job, or it was some dude down the street. But it was never, ever about owning up to something and building on that. He did eventually go to therapy, but not the way I did, I guess. Like, I was going to therapy like 2 to 3 times a week. I was very, very eager to start my healing process. He would go maybe once or twice a month. And then he had a therapist who was basically telling him that I was at fault for everything. So I knew I wasn't going to win. And so instead of engaging with me in a healthy adult conversation, he just decided to clam up. Now, fast forward this. A lot of people in my life had these tendencies, and as you can tell, I'm not one to back down, but I'm not confrontational unless the saying is, don't start none, won't be none. So I'm very, very peaceful. I don't like to pay my peace to anyone. I'd rather be peaceful and live a very quiet, solitary life than have people in my life that's going to start drama, which narcissistic people do. And so a lot of my family members would come with me with drama, and I was very straight up with them. And in response to my boundaries, I got the silent treatment. And you have to understand that the silent treatment is meant to make you anxious. The silent treatment is meant to punish you. It's meant to make you say, oh my God, what did I do wrong? How can we talk this through? How can we do this? How can we do that? The silent treatment is there to basically make you on pins and needles and to bow down to narcissistic people. Now, here's the difference between the silent treatment and ghosting. There is a difference. Ghosting is when that person just says, well, fuck it. I'm just going to do me and I'm not even going to deal with this person. But the silent treatment is malicious. It's intentionally meant to punish you. It's intentionally meant to make you come crawling back on your belly and your chin and to beg this person to converse with you. I would prefer to be ghosted than to have the silent treatment, because then I'm like, cool, this person will never be in my life again. They've made their exit, so I can get on with it. But the silent treatment is there to intentionally punish you, because narcissistic people know that most codependent people hate silence. They're people pleasers, and silence is pain. Silence is just as bad as getting socked in the mouth. It's pain, right? So how do you deal with the silent treatment? Now that you've kind of heard my stories about it, how did I deal with it personally? I will admit that when I went through the silent treatment with my former spouse, I did not do it right because I didn't know what I was dealing with. I was just like, why would he, doesn't he want to save this marriage? Doesn't he want to save, all this stuff that we built, But now that I realized what I went through after that horrific experience, how I deal with the silent treatment is very simple. I just give it back. But I give it back in a way of like, okay, well, you know what? If we're going to play like this, I can only fix me. I can only do me. So watch me do me. Yes, watch me do me. And then I just walk away from the whole conversation. I walk away from the silent treatment, because here's the thing. I think it's very fucked up that someone's going to use their mental energy, their emotional energy to punish you instead of fixing their own problems. You could use that same energy, that fucking limp dick energy, to fix yourself, to deal with your trauma, but you're going to instead externalize your stupidity and try to punish me. No, babe, that's not how this works. So when I know someone's giving me the silent treatment, I literally just say nothing. I don't even give them the argument. I don't even go on the defense. I'm just like, oh, we gonna be like that? Cool, baby. You do you, boo. And I act like they don't exist. I've done this with my family, most of them, because a lot of my family is very toxic people. They're very toxic. They're selfish and self-centered. And I would rather, like I said before, be alone than deal with selfish, self-centered people. Now, I know some people are just like, this your family, whatever, but I don't have that anymore. Family, blood relations don't get carte blanche. It was one gentleman on Facebook that he said something that just stuck with me. He says, blood will blind you before water will. Now think about that. Blood will blind you before water will. So I realized that when I have family members who give me the silent treatment, that they're trying to punish me and break me down. And that's not love. I realized that the people that I was emotionally and physically intimate with gave me the silent treatment. They don't love me either. Because now that I've come to the opposite side of that hell, which is codependency, I realize that healthy people actually talk. Healthy people actually are upfront, and healthy people want to solve the problem, not break you down. So when it comes to the silent treatment, if you're living with someone, don't even bring it up. Act like it doesn't exist. Just talk to them normally. Don't even bring up, if they don't talk to you, then just like, that's cool. Go on with your kids, go on with your friends, but just act like if they're going to stew because that's what they're doing. They're in a corner and they're pouting. So what do you do when kids pout? You ignore them and let them pout themselves out. If you're not living with someone and you're dealing with toxic coworkers or whatever, then just do everything by email. Make sure you have a paper trail. And then if it gets too bad, then you just go to HR. And if it gets even worse, then you just get another gig. Because you have to realize someone, an adult, a person who has pubic hair and pays taxes is doing this to you, they're never going to grow up. So don't even make them grow up. I hope that helps, Internet. Please remember, you are more important than the person that you're trying to please. So when they decide they want to go ahead and be passive aggressive, you be completely aggressive with your own self-love and self-value and self-worth. Have a good morning.